Welcome to another episode of Mr. Therapist and the Counselor Podcast. We are your guide to personal recovery, where you're dealing with an addiction, a mental health issue, maybe you're just trying to figure out life. And we are here to demystify therapy. Jesse O.
You said you're going to do the whole intro.
Oh, damn.
All right, keep going. This is what we talked about, but go ahead. Who do we have on the show today?
That's what you meant. Yeah. We have Jim Brillon. Is that Spanish, Jim? Is that French? Okay. So it's a French. I thought it was Spanish. I thought he was an hermano of mine. But Jesse O.
Here we go. Jim, thanks for coming out with
My
us
pleasure.
today.
Good to be here, guys.
Thank you.
This is fun.
So I always appreciate when someone drives out. And where are you driving from?
Huntington Beach.
Yeah. Okay. And it was a rainy day today.
Yeah.
So it was not the safest drive because Californians and rain don't mesh well together.
Give me more time to listen to my book on tape.
There you go. What are you listening to?
I'm actually listening to a book on mother-son enmeshment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
Kind of a topic that comes up a lot with different clients.
Nice. So do you consume audio well? Like, is it something? Because I can't do it like
on tape. Yeah, but I'm actually better if I can read it also, because a lot of times I'll be listening to a book and I realize that I haven't heard anything he said in 10 minutes because I'm thinking about something he said 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's impressive that you get distracted about something he said. I'll start thinking about what I ate last Tuesday or something, and it's just like, wait, what am I doing here? Come back to the breath, Yeah.
Jim, have you lived in Southern California most of your life?
Pretty much. I was born in Arizona. My family moved here when I was 2, so pretty much raised in Orange County.
Nice. And Jim, you're a licensed marriage and family therapist. Mm-hmm. How long have you been practicing for?
I've been practicing for about 12 years now, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm an MFT and an LPCC as well.
Yeah, and we always like to start just talking about, we kind of all know each other we worked at a place together.
A place
called
Don't
home.
mess this up, Jim. All right. No. But we've worked in the field together, and that's what's really cool about this podcast is we have so many connections to people out in the field, and I believe Jim is thriving right now, and it's so cool to see him doing what he's doing. But he was very cool that you came out here for us.
My pleasure.
So I'd like to start off just with this story. Were you part of Jesse's hiring process at that place we worked together?
I don't think so.
Were you part of my hiring process?
I think so.
You think you were? Okay.
I think so.
So when I first got hired there,
maybe I don't remember.
You were part of the detox, and I know they kind of kept things separate, right, with residential and detox. Yeah. But I got interviewed by Bev, Lisa, and Chuck. Uh-huh. And I thought I killed the interview. I was like, man, I feel so ready. Jenny loved me at the time. I was like, I'm in. I just got to kill this interview. And Lisa's so stoic and so she doesn't really give a lot away, right? And so I'm like, I don't know. I'm not too sure about Lisa. And wait, was it Bev? I think it was Bev. Was it Bev? No, I think it was Bev. I don't remember. And Bev, I think she was really nice. And then Chuck just has this face that's you don't know if he likes
Very
you,
stoic,
but
yeah.
you kind of feel like he doesn't really like you that much. So I'm like, damn, dude, I don't know how I did here. And so then I'm like, thank you guys, appreciate you guys. And Chuck shakes my hand. He's like, hey, good luck. I'm like, damn, dude, that is not a good sign, dude.
That wasn't a good luck response.
No, it was good luck, man. But it was
life.
Good luck. Good luck finding another job, you imbecile. So, anyway. But I got the job, and he said that he actually really liked me. So.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, and Jesse's hiring story. Actually, remember I told you about that?
What?
Not when you got hired from detox to residential. Everybody was asking me what do you think about this Jesse guy?
Oh yeah.
He kind of gives us a weird vibe, and I was like,
that's
no,
fair.
this
that's
guy's
fair,
good.
Though.
He's good. Believe me.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah, and you didn't get the role you wanted, but then the other person got it, and everybody was like, dang, we should have listened to Manny.
Yeah.
This other guy sucks. And then we got you on, and it was
okay.
good. Yeah.
I cleaned toilets for about 6 months, and that was fair. That was fair. I had to earn my spot, earn my keep.
Yeah.
Jim, what initially like drew you to the field to work? Why did you want to be a therapist, or was that the goal? Like growing up, like I want to go into this or that, or like take us back a little bit to that.
Yeah, and yes and no. I think when I was 20, I was trying to figure out who I am, and I think way back then, I wanted to go into the field of psychology.
Okay,
but I really struggled with self-confidence, not knowing, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah, and
there was a piece that nobody in my family had ever gone to college, and I was like, college isn't for our kind of people.
Yeah.
And I kind of did all kinds of other things. I got into different careers, and finally, when really what kind of clued me into this is a profession that I think would be meaningful for you is when I got myself into therapy, which was unfortunately after a real tragedy in my life, when my dad had moved away. Mom and dad were divorced. He needed help with his daily living, so he came down and lived with me and my partner at the time, and was tragically killed shortly after that. Wow. And I was just at a place where, the bottom fell out of my life. All the meaning, the purpose that was happening, and I tried to cope with that the best I could. I became very much of an activist, trying to get street stoplights and where the accident happened and all that kind of stuff. And
was he walking? He was walking, or
he was a 79-year-old man walking to the store to get a pack of matches to light his pipe. And was hit by a truck. Long story short, I was really depressed, really desperate. I got myself into therapy. Individual therapy. I ended up working with a men's group. And I was at a place where I was asking myself, like, if I had 6 months to live, because when you're faced with something like that, you're really, your own mortality kind of hits you right in the face. And, my answer was I would do something to help people. And I remember being in a men's group with a fantastic, at that time, I think she was probably 70 years old, Freudian psychologist running this men's group. And we were talking about careers and whatnot. And I was thinking to myself, I want to do something where I really look forward to going to work every day. And one day, Natalie says in this group, I've been doing this for 65 years, and I've looked forward to going to work every day. And it was kind of like this big light bulb moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just kind of started going back to, the drawing board, and went back to school and got my bachelor's, got my master's.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, man. What was your, before you stepped into a therapy office, did you have any preconceived notions about therapy that you were aware of, or was it not even? No, for me, I never even remember thinking about therapy before I stepped into a therapy room. So was there any preconceived notions for you at all?
Sure. I think some of my ideas were based on Woody Allen movies. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna talk about all my neuroticisms for 25 years.
That's great. Not great, but great at the same time.
But I did have a lot of ideas about how expensive it could be.
Okay.
What am I going to talk about? What if something comes up and I, don't know how to turn off the emotions, or all those things. I think especially a lot of men in our culture really struggle entering therapy because of all of those preconceived ideas.
Yeah,
that's really that's something we haven't talked about. That's a good highlight there. I think there is that stigma of I want to be able to manage these emotions. I don't want to completely break down and maybe just what we've seen on TV shows or whatever, like a Dr. Phil or something like that. We don't want to expose ourselves, be so vulnerable. So and for a lot of men, there's a resistance with that, even though, as the years go on and therapy's, a lot more accepted, there's still like a lot of stigma with therapy. Yeah. So no, that was a really great point there. So
because from the time that we're kids, we're all raised with the boy code. Number one rule of the boy code: never let anybody see that you're weak. And then we reinforce all that stuff with each other. We call each other names if we're too emotional, and it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be in control, but tender emotions, difficult, vulnerable emotions, we shame each other for that stuff. Many men they don't know how to, they can't understand their emotions. They can't often express them, which I think is one reason why we need women in our lives, because often they teach us emotional awareness.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, and I think it probably just comes from that place of, we're uncomfortable with emotions, so we make other people feel uncomfortable as well, And I know in my family, like that didn't only come from my friends, it came from my family too. Like I come from a family where they make you upset at something on purpose, and then they give you shit for getting upset. Like it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got upset at that, man. You're like, come on, like, dude, you've been picking at this for like an hour. Like, of course it's gonna happen, but yeah, it's crazy.
Yes. No, I bring up the women. I grew up with primarily my mom and my two sisters, and I remember when I would get too emotional, it'd be almost like I'd be like, well, I was raised by women. Like, I wanted to, like, I'm a man, guys. Just want to make sure, like, I'm very masculine. Like, I know the crying thing's not a good thing. It was like, but now as I've gotten older, like, I was very happy I was around women, because I was in touch with my emotions. I just didn't want to show those emotions. But like now, like working with men, often it's like, you see it so often where guys just cannot connect with the most. They understand happy, they understand sad, they most definitely know how it is to get angry. I don't know if sadness sometimes that turns into anger for them, but yeah, there's still a huge stigma with men, and that boy code, the playground messages. Yeah, that's the thing that's very standard present day. So,
and more recently, Jim, you have a pretty good following on YouTube and Instagram, I believe, and you've kind of tell us about that. Like, well, how did that? Because you're talking about a certain topic. Is it more than one topic, or the stuff that I've seen has been around narcissism, and if that's like a niche specialty for you, or how you came across that?
Well, the whole reason for starting any of the social media stuff was after the pandemic hit. My practice went to 100% telehealth, and needed help, like figuring out how do I market myself. I was really kind of talked into doing social media stuff. I didn't know what TikTok was. But we started doing some YouTube videos and TikTok, Instagram, and we talked about a lot of different things, from anxiety, depression, family dysfunction, narcissism, and the material on narcissism really resonated with people. And it was something that I was interested in, because I grew up with people that I could never figure out why it was that why is that person always competitive with me? Why I can never do anything? They're always like undermining me to other people. They have to be better than me, and I never could figure it out. And then I started reading James Masterson, where he was talking about, he called them the closet narcissist. And it was like, oh my God, that's what that is. Because narcissism is a topic that a lot of us, even therapists, don't really understand. I know for myself, you can tell me if this was your experience, going through school, taking your classes in your master's degree program. There's classes on diagnosis, the DSM, and professors teach you about narcissistic personality disorder. They're grandiose, they're always seeking validation, manipulative, but then they say, but don't ever worry, you're never going to see one in your office, because they never enter therapy because they don't think there's anything wrong with them.
I think I do remember hearing that.
Did you?
Yeah.
But they never tell you that it's not the narcissist that suffers in their life, it's the people around them that suffers.
So true.
Which I think is one of the issues that I personally have with the diagnosis in the DSM, is all of those traits of narcissism have to cause problems for the person in their life. But many narcissists are actually rewarded for their narcissistic traits. They're not suffering. The people in their lives are suffering.
Yeah. Was it someone that you said you encountered this personality in your life? Was it someone like a family member, a friend, or was it a client that would kind of?
Yeah, family member.
Family member. Okay. Yeah. That's hard. That's harder, I think, when it is a family member, especially if it is an immediate one, like, because unlike a friend, you can always change your friends, right? Or a client, you can always refer a client out. But when it's a family member, it's like, we just talked about boundaries. How do you place boundaries around that? It's so hard. Yeah.
I wanted to bring this up because I was recently doing like a training for like my recertification with my KDAC, but it talked about like narcissistic personality, and there's usually a lot of countertransference with that in the field. And I notice often, like, people I work with, therapists, when somebody seems like, often, not all the time, but often, like somebody's struggling with somebody, they'll be like, they're such a narcissist, even the therapists themselves. And I wonder if that's like one of the most triggering aspects for maybe to work with a client. Do you experience that a lot? Not to say that either one of you are like quick to throw a diagnosis on somebody, but do you see that as almost like a kind of a defense mechanism in any way?
I think I've worked with therapists who, when they encounter a client where they can't penetrate they can't really get through the client's defenses, they'll describe the client as narcissist. Like, especially if the client gets really angry, and they could be a narcissist, I don't know, or there could just be narcissistic traits, right, of like manipulation, extreme defensiveness,
the qualities,
lying, right? And so I'm like, I think some therapists or clinicians are quick to throw out that label. I feel like that happens more so in treatment, where like you're seeing.
We talked about this, right? They're just trying to pinpoint. They have a short period of time to work with somebody. It's not private practice where they're really like, you get some time to kind of build that relationship. Where like in the treatment centers, you'll get like 90 days maybe at the most. So like.
A good picture of a narcissist in therapy is probably Tony Soprano, right? Have you guys seen The Sopranos?
I never watched that show.
No, yeah, Tony Soprano. There's some really good therapist scenes on there, but yeah. What you mentioned, the effects of someone who lives with a narcissist. What are some of those? Yeah, what are some of those effects that you see in an office?
Well, it's actually one of the most devastating things that can happen to a person, because often there's an energetic bond that happens between, and I still don't fully understand it, but often people who are narcissists. Now, first of all, we have to clarify what a narcissist
Please
is.
Do
what they're not, because you hear a lot of people throwing the word around where they don't actually know what it means. And they think anytime somebody is a big fat jerk, they're a narcissist. Right. Well, all jerks are not narcissists.
Right.
Narcissists are people that have specific traits, and it's a spectrum disorder.
Okay.
So not everybody who you could say is a narcissist has NPD, but people can have varying levels of grandiosity. Which is a form of contempt. Yeah. Grandiosity is when you're in the one-up position, where you're contemptuous of another person. The one-down position is what we call shame, which is where you're contemptuous of yourself. And often a narcissist is somebody that feels a lot of shame when they're not regarded in the way that they hope to be. And they'll flip from shame into grandiosity. But people can have different ranges of these different traits. And on the low end of the spectrum is something we think of as healthy narcissism, which is something kids start to develop around the age 2, where they start learning words like I, me, and mine, and they're fighting to meet their own needs. But then they learn that, everybody else has needs too, and mine aren't more important than anybody else's. Somebody who's a high spectrum narcissist is stuck as an emotional toddler. But they don't have to have a personality disorder in order to be a narcissist. Right. Personality disorders are when those traits are pervasive and they happen in every situation. But I think it's important to I feel like I got kind of sidetracked. No, the original
question. This is great. I was like, just school us. This is good. No, I want to hear more and more about this. So.
Yeah, and so you've defined what a narcissist is, what it isn't, which is really helpful because it is thrown around a lot, especially in social media. Well, like I've seen a lot around like domestic violence or abuse, right? Where where someone will label like, oh, this guy's a narcissist because he did this to me. And as much as I'm like, I it's not right what they did, right? Especially if they've abused someone. I'm like, we need a little more to diagnose narcissism, right? And so, yeah, it's good to highlight that there's a difference and there's a point. You were about to say something.
No, just that. I think that's where we started was kind of like the buzzword, like the idea, let's say what a narcissist really is. And these buzzwords, and like maybe we'll talk about gaslighting in a little bit here, but that's like another very buzzword where it's like, I feel like he's gaslighting me. And I'm like, there's a difference between somebody maybe manipulating you or lying to you in comparison to gaslighting. Yeah. Jim, would you mind like kind of defining even with gaslighting the difference between those things?
Mentioning it, I remember your original question. You're talking about what are the effects of somebody who's abused by a narcissist. So gaslighting is an emotional control technique that is intentionally trying to get. Sometimes a narcissist doesn't realize that they're consciously that they're doing it, but the intention behind it is to get you to question your reality. I'm going to say something to you that makes you start to think, maybe I didn't see what I saw. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe oh my God, am I making too much of this? And you start questioning yourself. That's what gaslighting is. The term actually comes from a movie back in the 40s called Gaslight, where a husband tried to make his wife think she was crazy by turning the gas lights up and down.
Oh, so it's actually based. I've heard of the movie before. I read something about it, but I didn't know the actual the movie was about.
Yeah, but somebody who's abused by a narcissist, and I have talked with people about narcissistic abuse, and they're like, "What are you talking about? Abuse? How can somebody having a big ego be abusive?" Well, a high-level narcissist, a high-spectrum narcissist, is somebody that has different personas. And a public persona, they look like the greatest person ever. They put on this certain face, but behind closed doors where nobody can see is where they will tear people down. Well, they will gain their self-esteem by destroying another person's. And often a person who is very narcissistic, they're often attracted to people who are very empathic, because they sense in that person that this is somebody who's going to give me a lot of chances. They're not going to call me on my shit, and I can manipulate them.
Yeah.
And often both people have lived through childhood trauma.
Right.
When you look at attachment, often grandiose narcissists are people with avoidant attachment. Closet narcissists or vulnerable narcissists have anxious attachment. But they try to meet their own emotional needs by making another person a supply for their narcissistic supply.
So it probably takes a certain person to be under the spell of a narcissist, right? Like maybe someone who already doesn't have a high regard of themselves or a good self-esteem, or even friends or people around them to help them recognize abusive behavior, right, and support. I remember reading an article one time years back about this term highly sensitive people, and it was the first time that I heard about that being a thing. And I remember looking at it, I'm like, damn, it sounds like me. And I took it really personal. I was like, this sucks. But do you think people who are highly sensitive, it possibly comes from being having a relationship with someone, and maybe someone in their family had this narcissistic traits, and they've been part of this relationship, or would you say that's probably something else different?
It's a really good question. There absolutely are people who we call them sometimes HSPs. This is something called sensory processing sensitivity. It's on a spectrum. It's something that I think Elaine Aron is a psychologist that started writing about it in the 90s. An HSP is somebody who takes in a lot more stimulus from the environment. They notice things in details that other people don't. They feel their emotions deeper than other people. They're very deep processors. They think obsessively about things, which can operate like most things in the light and the shadow.
Yeah.
often,
No,
I'm just kidding.
but
I can tell you did something.
Sensitivity is really on point right now. Jeez.
But I think a lot of HSPs are also empaths, meaning that they feel other people's feelings.
Yeah.
Again, operates in the light and the shadows, because you can lose the difference between where do my emotions end and yours begin, and we feel other people's emotions and we take them on. And a lot of times, people who are highly sensitive, who are empaths, and maybe they don't have a strong sense of themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe they grew up with some childhood trauma themselves, where maybe their parents were emotionally immature. A lot of times, people fall into like the drama triangles, where they see somebody as a victim. Oh, poor, I can rescue them. You know? And that's one way that you kind of lose sense of yourself in trying to, rescue somebody. And in a narcissistic relationship, there's a stage called love bombing, where at first that narcissistic person is going to they're going to treat you like the best thing since sliced bread. They're going to treat you like a king or a queen until they feel like they've got you kind of hooked. And then they start devaluing you, kind of putting you down, finding fault with you, criticizing you. And there's this cycle that happens, it's idealizing, devaluing, discarding.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's a cycle that it plays a lot of havoc on a person's mental health. If you're told all the time that you're crazy, you're making shit up, that didn't happen, I didn't say that, everybody hates you, you really start to question yourself, and it undermines your sense of self. And it can devastate a person. Where recovery from that really involves learning self-compassion, learning to accept your own emotions, trust your own emotions, listen to your intuition, drawing boundaries, and it's a process.
Supportive people too, who can maybe like dispel limiting beliefs or whatnot.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's good, man. I was getting my popcorn ready. I'm going to take off right now. So, no, I mean, all this stuff is just like you hear it talked about so often. You talked about the closet narcissist. Like, is that like the covert narcissist? Okay, yeah.
What is the difference there with
the closet narcissist was the first term that Masterson used.
Okay.
And now I think we refer to it as covert narcissism or vulnerable narcissism.
Okay.
These are people that have the same sense of entitlement, grandiosity, but an overt narcissist is somebody who will tell you to your face, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than everybody in this room. An overt narcissist will not do that, or covert narcissist will not do that. Often they're actually very insecure. They have a very secret belief in themselves that they're better than other people, and nobody recognizes it, and so they present themselves as victims often. But they have this sense of grandiosity. They just don't tell anybody. They'll say, oh, I did everything I could and nobody ever appreciates me. And they're waiting for you to go, oh, I appreciate you. Oh, do you really? And that's how they get their self-esteem, as opposed to the way an overt narcissist.
That's so sneaky. Wow.
Hence the term covert.
Is there like, would you say, more self-awareness of the narcissistic traits with a covert narcissist versus an overt one?
That's a good question. That's one of the aspects of a narcissistic person is they tend not to have a lot of self-awareness or self-reflective ability. Now, some people do, and there are actually people that I've talked to that consider themselves self-aware narcissists. They recognize, and they've gotten help, and they can learn different behaviors.
That's a step forward too,
That's
right?
a huge step forward.
Wow,
I give anybody that has the courage to do that, I give you huge props. Because it's not an easy process either.
This conversation is taking me in a very interesting path, and it's what do you think? Oh man, Jesse, please moderate me if you need to hear. What do you think is the effects of some of the narcissistic personalities out there in the media right now? I think about Andrew Tate. I think about Donald Trump.
You're going this way. This is why I need to really. Okay, guys.
So it's interesting because I guess a part of me, personally, I kind of see personalities like that, and I'm like, I kind of look up to this. It's really very strong, very firm, very like they know themselves. They look like confident. But then I'm here, like when I hear you talk, I'm like, man, like, I don't know what these people do behind the scenes, but like, if behind the scenes you're like putting people down and talking crap to them and like making them feel shitty, like, no, I don't look up to you. Actually, that kind of sucks, So I don't know do you think there is a reinforcement for people who have narcissistic traits and are maybe more abusive towards other people to see something like that and almost feel like, oh, this is okay? Or I don't know if that's a good question to ask,
it's a great question. It's actually a very wise question, because you look at some. Now, I don't think there's anybody, including his cat, that doesn't think Donald Trump's a narcissist.
Yeah,
I mean that's we're not. It's not. It's one of the reasons I think that the topic has been so popular since in the last 10 years, because every single day you've seen what NPD looks like.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
But a lot of times those traits are, people are rewarded for them. If you're a killer on Wall Street or a killer CEO, you move up the ranks faster, right? And they're always looking for sycophants who will be like flying monkeys for them, right?
Yeah.
But you cross them, there's no loyalty for them at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you are, giving them narcissistic supply, they'll treat you great. But as soon as you say anything negative, you notice that they're very sensitive to rejection.
Yeah.
So very thin-skinned. But the culture promotes narcissism.
Yeah.
And DSM tells us that it's 1% to 6% of the population. I think it's a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
Celebrity culture, even social media promotes narcissism. The culture promotes it.
For sure.
Because we're talking about media and politics, I don't know if this is like, would you say in any ways the culture promotes like gaslighting in some sense as well, in the sense of like tricking us into believing certain things that
I think politics do.
Yeah, I guess
media does. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, classic example. That wasn't an insurrection. That was a walk in the park. What are you imagining? We saw it on TV.
Right. Yeah.
People died.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or even two different like medias reporting the same thing in completely different ways, right? Like that's
absolutely. It happens all the time. I mean, everything from the stuff you see on Twitter, it's half of it's gaslighting.
Yeah.
People spreading misinformation, disinformation. Don't trust what you see, trust what I say.
Yeah. It's a whole clickbait society too, where it's like they'll take parts and it's just like you'll see that, you'll be drawn to that, and that almost becomes the truth instead of somebody really looking into the actual like article or what's going on with this event, this experience. So
here's another topic I'd kind of go into. Do you think narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic traits and toxic masculinity are the same thing?
I wouldn't say they're the same thing, and I really I'm kind of trying to get away from the term toxic masculinity, because I think it tends to shame men that often don't know any better.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But I think what you're talking, when you look at someone like Andrew Tate, I mean, that's a classic example of what you'd call toxic masculinity, right?
What makes it toxic masculinity? Like you look at a fellow like Andrew Tate, what would make it toxic masculinity versus confident and just sort of like, I don't know, confident, I guess.
Well, I mean, the correlation with narcissism, is the grandiosity. I'm better than you. I have the right to call you names. I have the right to slut shame you or abuse you. That's grandiosity. That's narcissism.
Yeah.
The misogyny is,
that makes it toxic too. Is like the grandiosity. Yeah.
Well, it's the misogyny. It's the entitlement. That I'm entitled to. To do. I can say or do whatever I want because I'm a man in this culture, and then especially if I'm a white man in this culture.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you have any questions on that?
Andrew Tate? No, I do not.
Trying to get.
I don't really watch him too much.
Yeah.
So
No, it's okay. It brought me there, right? As we're talking about these personalities.
I feel comfortable to bring that up.
That term, toxic masculinity, is such a big term, and I don't like it either, because I think a lot of people. I don't know, man. I feel like a lot of people are just looking for role models, right? Like, we don't really grow up with the best role models. Sometimes we don't get to pick who our family is, and a lot of people are looking for role models of what a man is. I had a discussion with a few individuals, and I run a group, actually. It's called the Empowered Circle. We meet once a month, and one of the things is like, hey man, who taught you to be a man? Where did you pick up those types of lessons, that imagery, that who was a role model for you? And I don't think anyone mentioned their dad, right? It was it was just people on TV, or maybe people at school who you kind of looked up to. And right now there are public figures are role models for some people who don't have anyone else to look to, right? And so I think toxic masculinity can shame someone who's just trying to figure out their way, trying to figure out what a man is and how they're supposed to interact, behave.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. A lot of times we don't have a role model. What does a big-hearted man who's in touch with their emotions look like?
Yeah.
And it's not about feminizing men. It's about creating men that have big hearts, that can share their emotions, that don't have to take advantage of another person.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it's not easy, because like you said, most of us don't really have the role models for that.
And I think, that one riddle where they were I forget, I'm going to mess it up, but they're hey, this guy takes his son to the doctor, and the doctor says, I can't treat him because he's my son. And they were what's the solve the riddle? It's the doctor's a woman. Whoa, I imagine the doctor being a guy. And I feel at times toxic masculinity and narcissism, I asked you that question because I think you think of narcissism, a lot of people think of guys, right? A guy narcissist.
Yeah.
And so that question came from narcissistic can be a woman, a female too. Absolutely. And just trying to dispel that a little bit of it just doesn't have to be the image of a man,
Yeah, that's another great point. Often there are more overt narcissists, grandiose narcissists that tend to be men. More women tend to be more covert, because in our culture, again, here's that shame grandiosity thing. For men, our grandiosity is overt. Our shame is covert.
Gotcha. Yeah.
We hide it.
Yeah.
For women, their shame is overt, but their grandiosity is covert.
Oh, it's interesting.
Because it's not okay to be a grandiose woman, right?
Historically, society-wise.
A grandiose man, he's a stud. He's such a killer businessman. A woman who's, we have all kinds of derogatory names for her.
Yeah.
So if I do become a killer business guy, I should be a very compassionate and just to kind of break the mold there, right? Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's a good discussion.
Yeah.
You got anything else on this?
No, we could probably continue to talk about the narcissist. And the attachments, you brought up different attachment theories.
Yeah.
I guess maybe in the family dynamic, a little bit more about narcissists. I think you talked about a narcissist, parent.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too.
Oh.
You have a termed coin. I won't mess it up.
Well, it's not. I didn't coin the term, the emotionally immature parents, and I think it's actually a really good way to look at these things, because, one thing I want to say is the stuff we talk about on social media, TikTok, Instagram, it is not about diagnosing people in five easy steps, and we don't get to diagnose each other.
We're not doing treatment on Instagram.
Yeah, it's education. TikTok is not therapy, but recognizes some of those traits. What was the original question? I'm kind of all.
You're great, man.
We were just having you introduce the topic of
emotionally immature parents.
Yeah,
I think it's actually a good way to look at maybe people that we see in cluster B, personality issues, whether somebody has borderline traits, and again, borderline is a spectrum as well. People can have borderline features but not have a personality disorder. They can be emotionally dysregulated. They can split. But if you look at somebody as being emotionally immature, I think that kind of covers a lot of that cluster B stuff. And one of the best predictors for becoming a narcissist is being raised by a narcissist.
Yeah.
But parents can be emotionally immature. I didn't coin the term either. I know that there's been different therapists, psychologists that have written about it. But an emotionally immature parent is somebody that doesn't understand their own emotions sometimes. And when you grow up with an emotionally immature parent, you don't get to have your own emotions either.
Right. Yeah.
You don't get to be angry. Sometimes you don't get to be joyful. You have to kind of like stuff your individuality. Because if you have your own thoughts and feelings, you might actually figure out how screwed up we are. So I think that term of emotionally immature parents, I think it's a better way of understanding a lot of the dynamics that happens with a parent who's narcissistic, has mental illness, or has an addiction.
That's so interesting. It also the term as a therapist, it makes me more compassionate towards someone. Just like seeing them as emotionally immature versus seeing them as a narcissist. Like narcissism, I'll kind of want to be like write them off, But if it's emotionally immature parent, I'm like, oh, okay, I can work with that, It reminds me, I had just talked about this on a recent show. My daughter's doing soccer right now.
Oh, cool.
And she's 5 years old, and so they don't keep score or anything. They just let them play, right? But there's this part of me that gets so frustrated because she's not attacking the ball, and she doesn't have that aggression I really want her to have. And I'm just like, this is the messed up part of me is like, you're not performing well enough, And I think about this term of emotionally immature parent. I think the emotionally mature part of me needs to recognize that I feel that, and not make her pay for that, right? Not make her feel inadequate, or she's not doing good enough, and understand that she's having fun. And that's so hard to do for me right now. And so I can really relate with that term, even as you kind of say it. I'm like, my dad let me have it because I wasn't performing. He's like, oh, you suck. I'm not going to bring you next week, So I'm like, okay, I got to break this pattern. But it really, gosh, I don't know. I feel like we're all kind of susceptible to that.
Absolutely. And, I think it's beautiful that you could actually be that honest and open and recognize that, and not beat yourself up for it. And absolutely, this is about breaking transgenerational patterns. But that emotional immaturity, a lot of it is you've got to be perfect. There's a great song that Alanis Morissette did years ago called "Perfect," that talks about that exactly. You got to make us prouder. But recognizing that it's like, wow, that's my need. To make you make me look good.
Right. Yeah. You got to hold up my image, hold
up the standard.
Or even I feel like you can't make me feel uncomfortable. I got to feel comfortable with the way everyone's looking, the way everyone's presenting. And if you cross me at any point, I got to make it known, you can't disagree with me, all these norms.
That's so much to take on though. It's just, it's overwhelming. So,
It's hard to do. I think I'm a family man, and I think the more that I think about being a good family member, a good support of the people in my family, it's tolerating these insecurities that come up in your family, letting people be themselves, and not forcing them to shape to fit you, what you want, your mold, your idea. And that probably going to get harder as our kids grow up and get older, you know. It's because then they start making their own decisions. We live in a traditional family, and so if anybody goes against the fold, the whole family is going to react. If we have a child who has a disability, let's say maybe autism spectrum or something that limits them from being able to play soccer or being able to fit the mold of this person, my family's going to trip out, right? And they're going to be like, this is not okay, right? Or if we have a child who identifies as gay, or it's going to be hectic for my family. So it's so crazy. I think about just the responsibility that you have to hold as a parent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is, and recognizing those imperfections in yourself.
Yeah.
But hopefully having some compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
That you're a limited, flawed human being, just like me and everybody else.
Yeah.
Jim, you also work strongly with the. You're gonna say it for me, right? The
LGBTQ.
Yeah, I thought there was more to it.
AI.
You
LGBTQ.
said you were gonna add that part for me.
My bad.
I said IE earlier, like with Riverside community
Inland
as well.
Empire.
Well, they're always adding letters.
I know.
It confuses me sometimes.
I was like, I don't want to screw this up, but like, but you work with that population, and I kind of just want to know like. Some of your experiences in the sense and just like what are some stigmas for that community when it comes to like therapy?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the stigma thing is continuing. I think at some point, and I call them the communities. It's not a community.
Yeah.
There are actually a number of different communities. There, in the last 20, 30 years, some of that stigma has been broken down, and recently. Because of the reactionary political state that our country's in, LGBT people are being demonized all over again. No. They're being called groomers and some age-old, tropes to demonize people.
Yeah.
So, I think there's often a stigma regarding therapy in the first place. For LGBT people, I think it can be really hard to find a therapist who's affirmative of your orientation. I consider myself an LGBT affirmative therapist. In other words, I'm not going to tolerate your sexuality. I'm going to embrace you as a whole person. We tolerate like inclement weather. We tolerate ants at a picnic. We don't need to tolerate each other. We need to embrace each other, accept each other.
You think it's hard to find a LGBT affirmative therapist?
I think it can be.
Yeah,
I think it can be because there are a lot of people that have their own heteronormative concepts.
Yeah.
Maybe they're afraid of the whole subject.
Biased,
and the last thing that an LGBT person needs is to go to a therapist who's going to overtly or covertly shame them, or where you have to like spell out your experience,
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a gay person to be an LGBT affirmative therapist.
Yeah.
There are lots of, straight clinicians who are not.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. That kind of blows my mind. Just that, like, you just tolerate and not affirm someone, right? That's crazy.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. What? And so right now, because of the political climate, you think it's been kind of harder for someone who identifies as gay to find to I guess just to live. It sounds like just to exist.
It's harder to be an LGBT person now. I mean, you see people going into Target stores and tearing clothes off the racks and all this crazy stuff. But those are waves that come and go.
Yeah.
But LGBT people enter therapy for the same reasons that any other person does.
Yeah.
Anxiety, depression, family of origin issues. But often, they have unique struggles where it comes to stigma, shame, and often the shame that a gay person, for instance, experiences in their family is much worse than the culture.
Let's talk about that, because so my experience working with this population is a lot of around teenagers, and the ones that I've come across, the clients I've come across, a lot of what I'm doing is actually family work. It's actually not even the client that the family brings in the client. They're, and they're worried that the client identifies as gay, and they're like, hey, like, this isn't okay with our family. They're very traditional family members, and in the family's like, I don't know what we did. Is there a message we didn't like? Maybe we didn't put them in sports. We were too soft, and so I'm having to really explain just like what sexual orientation is, right, and how it's seen.
So, like, do you really experience these things of like?
I just had this.
Like, do enough masculine things?
I just had this conversation the other day, and in this, it's so a lot of traditional cultures will see this as like a reaction to trauma, to like a sexual trauma that's happened. So because a sexual trauma happened, someone was abused, now they're gay. And I'm like, well, you know, and I want to know if I explained this right too, because I remember I was like, you know what, I was having a lot of internal like discomfort, not knowing how to, because I'm like, is a family just gonna like hang up the phone on me and like call me names because I'm not agreeing with her? So I told them, I was like, hey, you know what, like I'm very sorry that your child experienced this, right? And so the experience of trauma, I'm like, you know what, the trauma may or may not have impacted their sexual orientation. I don't know. I'm like, but what would you guys do even if it did or it didn't, and we won't ever know, if your son still wants to be gay? You know, like, how would you guys, could you live with that? Could you accept that? Is that something? So we really had to have this uncomfortable, for me it was uncomfortable. It ended up being okay, and they were, you know, both very receptive to the conversation. But it was very hyper-focused on this idea of like, man, if we just would have prevented that from happening, this would have never happened. I'm like, I don't think you can say that. Like, you know, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. It goes into this whole topic of like, you know, what's sort of like genes versus environment, right? And so it's, I don't know. How do you think I handled that?
No, it's a really, you know, it's a complex topic, and
it is.
There's a lot of misunderstanding about it, you know, that you know, if somebody is traumatized as a child, they're going to turn gay, or if mommy loves me too much and daddy doesn't love me enough, you know, but those are just, you know, misconceptions. And I think you got to have compassion for the family, because, you know, when one of their kids come out, not so much today, but in the past, that means they give up, I'm going to be a grandparent.
Right.
That means, you know, we don't get to, you know, you're not going to pass the family name for one more generation, all those things. And those expectations are painful for the family too.
Yeah.
But I think it's really crucial that they understand that you didn't turn somebody gay. You can't turn somebody gay. I mean, research, you know, tells us that there are biological components, but we don't understand them fully yet. Is it nature, nurture? It's some of both. We know that it runs in families, and you know, but I don't think we understand the genetic component of it yet. Yeah. But you know, those expectations that come from family members, I mean, those are the main reasons kids run away from home, because their parents reject them because.
And suicide rates, right?
Absolutely.
Like suicide rates can be super high.
And even with all the progress, you know, with gay marriage and people, you know, being more accepting, you know, suicide rates among LGBT teens is still incredibly high, and I mean, it's heartbreaking to me. Yeah. You know, but it involves, you know, educating the family like you're trying to do. You know, not shaming them for being stupid or you know. Because those memes are things that are repeated, and you know, often they just don't have the education about it.
And if I end up working with this family, like I'm like, I think after what you said, and you know, validated what I was thinking. I was like, it's going to be really a lot of grief work with the family, right? Absolutely. A lot of grief work around, like what we were expecting, what we were hoping, what's going to change. And so it's you really do have to have compassion for both sides, even if it's like super traditional viewpoints, you know what I mean, or very religious viewpoints in this case. And it's like, but really, like, everyone's trying to do the best they can. And you know, one thing I did say, and I was like, you know, like, I think the one thing that's important here is, like, you know, that you don't turn away from your child right now, because this is you know, one of the leading factors in this age group and in this population in taking their own life, is they don't feel very supported. They don't feel loved. They feel like, man, like, now my family like rejects me, right? And so I'm proud of this family because they were super embracive of that. Good. But
that's just a heartbreaking statement, because I could imagine this kid looking to their mother and father, this love that their entire life, and then, you know, because they are not this, you know, they come out that, like, you know, maybe they'll get rejected, and it's just, that's heartbreaking. You know, like, there would even be a doubt that your parents wouldn't love you or support you. Right. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I mean, I have I don't know if I have expectations for my daughter right now. She's so young. She's only 2, but I want her to be okay. I want her to be healthy. I want her to be happy. And I say I want my kid to be whatever she wants to be, and at the end of the day, I think that's true. That's true to that statement.
Healthy, bro.
Yeah, I just want her to be okay and get through this hectic, mad world that we live in. So it's just, it must be so scary for somebody to like, I can count on my mom or dad, and all of a sudden in a moment because of something that they didn't maybe expect, or a change. It's just like, I don't know, to alienate a child. It's just so sad.
Yeah, and I mean, the mental health statistics tell us that LGBT person, the more out you are, the better your mental health. Yeah. But it's not healthy for some people to come out. If you risk alienation from your family,
so who are you out to? I think matters, right?
It's not safe. So there are a lot of people that even in this day and age, it's not safe to come out to your family.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of truth to that.
I have a question. I want to take this somewhere a little random.
Okay, you can go. You've been doing this with Andrew Tate, so go ahead.
I got another one similar. So what do you...
What figure you're going to bring up
this
now?
Is okay. Yeah, I thought this is okay to talk about,
Jim
guys.
Is okay?
Yeah,
okay.
Jim. You don't have to answer this question. What do you think about like the stuff around like Dave Chappelle and the jokes that he kind of talks about, the transsexual jokes? There's a lot of heat that comes across of it, and some people are okay with it. Some people, I think there's the argument of like he makes it okay to talk about, and then there's the argument of like, well, he kind of is encouraging just sort of hate for LGBT, more the transsexual population though, the transgender population. Yeah, sorry.
I honestly,
sorry if I'm misspeaking anyway. I'm like really like trying to.
No. I honestly, I haven't heard the things. I've heard that he said some things that some people, are offended. I haven't heard what those things are. But there are different people in the culture, who will say anti-trans things. There's a huge anti-trans movement that much of it is political, but people from J.K. Rowling's to Jordan Peterson to Dave Chappelle, says stuff that, I don't know the reason behind it, whether it's just trying to push some agenda or just trying to get people to talk about it like we are right now. Who knows? But it is the trans community it's a community that still the suicide and homicide rates for trans women is higher than almost any other group in our country.
Oh wow!
And
a trans woman is someone who was male and converted to female.
Right,
okay.
And a lot of that has to do with toxic masculinity. A straight man who sees, how dare you give up your privilege as a man to become a woman. There's a lot. It's a complex thing, but the whole idea about there's what I think are politically motivated, ridiculous memes about trying to trans our kids. Drag queens are trying to groom children. All that stuff. That's the political blowback that's happening right now.
Yeah,
I don't really know much about the Chappelle stuff either. I mean, I know that like. Yeah, he's said some things, but I kind of I don't know. I wasn't really interested in it. I mean, I've heard this thing with I think it's they talk about the free speech thing, right? And I think comedians, there's this thing of like comedians can't be comedians anymore, and like nothing is off topic. Like they could talk about everything, but at the same time, though, I believe in free speech for sure. We should be allowed to have free speech, but there's also that sense of sometimes people abuse that privilege of free speech, something we kind of talked about as well. So, but I'm not really too sure about like, I know what you said, J.K. Rowling's, like she had brought some stuff up and said some stuff was kind of like, just kind of out of nowhere really, like, but
I don't know who that is.
Harry Potter, man.
Oh yeah, so I actually thought it was, man. But I was like, "There's no way you guys are talking about the Harry Potter."
Why wouldn't we talk about Harry Potter?
I don't know. It just was like a random person, but okay. I didn't know she got political.
What house are you a part of?
Me?
Yeah.
Dude, Gryffindor. Slytherin.
I'm all day Slytherin, right?
You are Slytherin.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So.
How about you, Jim? What house?
Probably Gryffindor.
Gryffindor. Yeah.
Hoping not Hufflepuff.
Not Hufflepuff.
Just got down on the Potter. I like it. Dude. That's good. So
cool. Is there anything specific to the trans community that would be just important to talk about, or whether it's a stigma or something that makes issues that they go through unique versus someone who's gay? versus someone who's, yeah.
Well, that's a big question. I mean, other than the kind of the political reactionary times that we live in right now, I can only imagine how difficult it must be at some point in your life to realize that there's something like fundamentally kind of wrong with the way I feel about being in this gender and in this body, and it's something that has existed throughout history. There's a lot of smart, reasonable conversations that we should be having about when do you affirm, a child's, for instance, when do you start talking about transitioning? I think people can err on both sides, where they're pushing things too fast, or maybe they're like the whole thing is a lie. Hopefully people can have conversations, like we're doing right now, talking about this stuff.
That's the biggest thing, right? It's like being able to have conversations. Because I feel like a lot of the attacks on populations it's almost like coming from a place of fear. People don't really know what's going on. That there's a lot of times where I'll see claims like, people are trying to have certain books in our school to push on this agenda. And you look into the research and it's like, it's not as black and white as like the headlines makes it seem, and it's, so it really, I think, a lot of this, the medicine for a lot of this is having open dialogue and just getting to know other sides. Just you don't have to agree to any of it, but it's like just get to know what the discussions are actually about.
Well, things we don't understand, we're often afraid of. So there's the fear thing.
I
told you about I've experienced really one trans client in the program that I work. And I had that conversation. I was like, it's some way I don't want to mess up the pronoun. I even said that, but it was the more questions I was just more honest and more vulnerable with him. It was easier. And I think he welcomed that. He was like, thanks for just talking to me. And at the end of the day, he's just a person. Yeah, he's a human being, and we have different backgrounds with similar experiences, and we're meeting in the middle. And I'm learning about you, So I appreciate, but there's a fear with that, the fear of the unknown, and just having these really transparent conversations. And I, don't get me wrong, there's a part of me, like I said, I didn't want to offend him. I didn't, because I want to work with him. I want to help where I can help. So it's just ask questions and be open, but do it with some tenderness, I guess, and just maybe some sensitivity to something you don't know.
Right.
I'm not trying to step on your toes here, but I'm also very inexperienced with this or with that. So
and then just as I think I feel like a lot of conservatives, here you go, political again, and
you want to turn this into a political
no, I don't. I go here. My heart's telling me to go here. I feel like they also they're also Christian, right? And so there's this religious sort of part of sort of a conflict with something like homosexuality or transgenderism, and so it's but to me, I don't know what you just said. We're all people. I feel like, and I'm a Christian guy, and I feel like that really hits the nail on the head of my beliefs is have compassion for people, and you don't judge people because you're not the judge of people. No. And so I'm I can really step into that, and I can really align myself to that whenever whenever I'm in conflict with anything. It's people are people.
Yeah.
And that person I have more common with any person I can point out than anything else in this world, right? And so that's at the end of the day something that brings me closer to being open-minded and understanding people.
Yeah.
So
just accepting. Well, I think that's part of the struggle is accepting diversity and rather than otherizing people, trying to actually understand some of their experience.
So cool.
Yeah.
Wow, what a powerful discussion.
Yeah, that was great.
What'd you think? Was it okay? A little. Yeah, was it uncomfortable at times? But I don't know. That was cool.
That's the whole political thing.
Yeah. I know, dude. I got a little wild today.
I love talking about Andrew Tate. You might as well just tell us our political parties right now, man.
Who we all voting for?
Again, not speaking as a therapist, but just as a person, as a citizen. Part of the reason that it gets so heated is because we don't talk about stuff, and when you get to the point where I can't talk to one of those people then the walls start, you know, the walls go up and the connection breaks down.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
And probably does give us this advantage though, is that like you do meet people on different sides, and I meet them as people. Like you know, and at times it could be just like my own beliefs or ethics. Sure, I'm like, oh wait, what? You're what? You know, I'm like, but I'm right. Like, you know what? Stop. Like I'm just. Let's talk. And then I find myself having these great conversations and just trying to free my mind in the experience.
Yeah, we got to have like a mental health party, like a political party, because I feel like we are the best at like this, like, because when someone comes into your office, like, you're not like, what party are you registered with? What are your beliefs? It's like, no, it's like, who are you as an individual? Yeah. And really, like, all of that shit goes out the window, and you're connecting with an individual.
Hopefully, that's being a trained mental health professional. Yeah. Hopefully, that's the lens you're looking at people through, not politics or gender or judgment.
Exactly. So. Do you have just thank you for the discussion.
Sure, my pleasure.
So much. So many cool topics that we don't really talk about. Yeah. So it's such an honor to have you here.
Pleasure.
What?
Jim was dropping knowledge left and right. It was beautiful.
Dude, no, it was awesome. I swear, dude.
But yeah, is there anything that you want to promote, or is there anything that you want to plug?
You seeing clients right now? Or?
Yeah, seeing clients. At times, you know, my calendar gets full and I don't have availability, but you know, as people finish their process, I have.
And you got a wait list too, so if anybody does want to reach out to you, you can get on your wait list and have them be doing that. Okay. And if you do bring anything out in the future, we'll promote it because you're an awesome friend.
Love Jim, man. He's awesome. So,
cool. Jim Brillon.
And best of luck to you guys in this venture. Hopefully it just continues to flourish. And, you know, I didn't expect that we would talk about some of the topics we talked about today, but I'm glad that we did. You know, and you know, I think it's great that there's platforms like this where people can talk openly and share ideas and be authentic.
Awesome, man. Cool. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
My pleasure.